Hey, welcome to Yvonne Wakefield's YouTube channel. I read from my books, Babe in the Woods. You've been here long enough, you know. It's about this log cabin I built when I was 18, just a couple years ago. Tonight, before I get into it, I have a little Teddy tale. You'll see that he had his first birthday party. But yesterday morning, I was running out. I write for a golf magazine, and I was running out to do an interview at this golf course, like 150 miles away. And Teddy is in the bathroom crying. I'm thinking, oh my God, he's sick, something's wrong. And then I look, and he had somehow tossed his dog toy into the toilet, and it was floating like around, and he couldn't get it. So we're going to put a picture of that. It was just kind of funny. So I'm going to put Teddy down, and I just told Arturo I should have a camera on these two because they just play and play. And I took his squeaky toy away. If you guys followed me, this is a foster fail. There's a segment in around Christmas time when I was fostering him, when he was 2.25 pounds. Now he's a strapping 7.8 at 1 year. Say goodbye, Teddy. I'll see you later, little guy. You guys be nice. So one thing I want to say is part of my day today is I had to get a new computer because Windows 10 or whatever it was is no longer going to be supported. So I had to buy a whole new computer, get all my files transferred over onto a new computer. And it's a job, but one I had to pay for it. But I want to say that when I first was at the cabin and writing, there still was no electricity. Laptop computers weren't designed. I think computers were like as big as my house. So, I mean, I started writing in these 8x10 books, which I still do up at the cabin. And I had actually containers, milk crates of these that I kept my journals in. So today I still continue to journal up there, but I've been using these kind of handmade ones that people give me. It's just a little harder to write in, but I still write in these. And then the ironic thing is when I come back to my river house, which is a very contemporary house, I transcribe what I've written by kerosene lamplight onto computers. So that's just a little dichotomy. All right, so we're going to read tonight from chapter 21, but I want to recap the previous chapter 20. It was called The Moon and I, and it's like it was dealing with like what's it like if a woman had really severe menstrual pain, which because I had endometriosis, and you're trying to work using heavy equipment in a primitive condition. And on top of that, it starts to pour rain, and I get my truck stuck, and I can't get out. I'm low on food, like really low on food. And the first day I felt any better, I went out and I painted in the rain, and it started to rain. But then that evening, the moon came up, and I just like focused on the moon, and it talks about the power of lunar forces. But tonight, I want to talk about this chapter, which is neighborly advice. And if you've been following it, the only people I really name by names here are Dale and Annabelle Tatton, who were these people who really helped me out all the time. In fact, he was the guy who cut all the finished lumber in my cabin. And I also talk about Jim. And I'm just going to give you a little retrospect at the end about this. So one afternoon, I stopped by the Tatton's house for a quick visit. From her recliner, Annabelle sees me through the screen door. "Let yourself in, Laban." Remember, that's the nickname they gave me, is Laban. And she relaxes back into a well-seasoned Naugahyde recliner. I sit beside her on the couch, the plastic coverlet crinkling and sticking to the backs of my bare legs. Annabelle asks what I've been up to and does not turn down the volume, so I must make myself heard over the TV. I fill her in about the details of building and pouring footings and walls, but say nothing of my recent moon exchange, fearing she will offer me one of her usual home remedies, like a Walla Walla onion and cheddar cheese as a cure-all for sleepiness. So retrospect, I'm pouring foundation walls for this log studio with a solid cement foundation, foundation. And prior to moving into the cabin when I couldn't sleep, Annabelle recommended I eat a piece of cheddar cheese, had to be Tillamook, and a slice of Walla Walla onion, and that would cure insomnia. That's still in question. Need any help, Yvonne? She asks after I tell her what I'm ready to pull apart the forms. No, I'm fine. It's just nails, I say, then stay and watch the tail end of As the World Turns over a bowl of Neapolitan ice cream. Annabelle overweighs my dish with strawberry. My favorite, she says, filling her bowl with chocolate and vanilla. Although I prefer chocolate and vanilla, I keep my mouth shut around a spoonful of selfless consideration. The day after my visit with Annabelle, I set out to dismantle the forms. Rain has soaked the boards but didn't touch the cement. As the damp morning evaporates into a sunny afternoon, the boards dry, clenching those 16-penny nails tighter. The nails shriek, "Let us be!" even more defiantly when a crowbar pulls each screaming head out. I take to calling them little suckers and more as I wrench my wrist back and forth, jerking and twisting one way, then the other before a nail pulls free and falls to the rust away amid pine needle potpourri. While I yell at nails, they scream back. Dale and Annabelle show up unexpectedly. It is the middle of the week, so Dale has quit his work, most likely because Annabelle told him about mine. With two more sets of hands helping, form boards peel away easily, leaving grainy impressions in 4 damp cement walls. By late afternoon, the last board has been denailed, scraped clean, and stacked for Jim's friend Jake to pick up. I'm ready to call it a day, but Annabelle and Dale stay, insisting on helping me straighten all the nails we've pulled out. You can reuse them, Dale says, a steely bouquet of twisted 16 in his fist. Got anything to put them in? I do. We scour the building site, filling a dented and punctured 2-gallon bucket with dejected nails, then dump it between us. Annabelle grabs a bunch, sits down on a log, and starts hammering away. Dale and I join her. This one looks too far gone. I hold out a nail bent like a horseshoe, the formation we make sitting on windfalls and stumps. Give it to me. Annabelle takes the nail, places it on a log, and in one sound blow, nearly straightens it. We chat away, smacking nails in positions they weren't manufactured to be hammered until most of them have been resurrected nearly straight and dropped into a holy bucket. After Dale and Annabelle leave, I stow the recycled 16 pennies beside a box of shiny new ones. Before today, I had no idea nails could be recycled because I'd never been in a position to use up all the use in something useful. That's a hard one to say. I am out running the afternoon. Jake hauled away clean form boards and stopped when I see the judge in a gathering of apple trees growing at the base of his grassy meadow. He explains that he is propping up a branch a bear has broke earlier that week. Remember, the judge is the closest person down from me, and he only comes up like on weekends. The other neighbors are a Mormon family about 5 miles down the road. So the judge says, they have a sweet tooth, same as you and me. Hand me that board, will you, Squeedunk? That's also his nickname for me. The judge says, addressing me with his peculiar brand of a nickname. I pass him a splintery 2x4 and he nails it to the framework. They eat so many apples, it makes them drunk. What? I steady the board as the judge wedges the top to support the limb he hopes will grow stout again. When they get a belly full of apples, especially on a hot day, they go and lie down in the sun for a nap. The apples ferment in their gut, makes them drunk. Really? I think the judge is pulling my leg. Really? He climbs down to nail a jury rig brace, and they crack piles big as a pie. Apples shake on the branch, the judge reinforces along with new gastronomic images. Later that week, when I'm out running bareback on trails, I came across a specimen not pictured in a scatology reference. The book mentioned the change of season is evident in wild animal poo. The author didn't use the exact terminology, but did indicate that especially in late summer, omnivores fill up on ripe berries and fruit, which alters the color and texture of their excrement. A bear hunter also told me that late summer was the best time to kill a bear for eating because all the seasonal fruit and berries sweeten their meat. Later, that hunter would be cited for using rancid bacon to bake and kill bears out of season. The shit that tripped my running pace appeared to be more of an aborted apple kugel than animal excreta. I squatted for a closer look, prodded the pile with a pine stick, felt the hot sun on my neck and a chill run up my spine as I realized a pair of moccasins was my sole defense against what I could never outrun. I knew then the judge wasn't pulling my leg, and the bear baiter didn't lie. Chocked through with red, brown, and yellow apple skin seeds and stems, this poop pile would more than fill a pie pan, and it was glistening fresh. I kept running. Time was also running out if I was going to be in Northern California to resume my art education. Before I wanted to fall enough trees for the wall logs. There was no time to dry knife them, but the bark would protect the cadmium until I returned to further the creation of what I would leave a half-baked, bear-proof studio. Jim felled 16 trees the last day he was there, so that was a start. It took me 3 days to fell and limb what I guess would be enough to buck into logs I could wrangle into a finished structure. I didn't want to leave 70 trees lying on wet, freezing, and thawing ground over winter and spring. I also didn't want the Nelsons to cat them out because they refused payment. Nor did I want the site carved up by heavy equipment and sought out the means of dragging and decking with less environmental impact. A small ad for mule logging was printed in the Juniper Press, a free weekly mimeographed newsletter distributed through town. I picked up a copy from the checker's counter, then dialed the number for an advertised listing at the payphone outside of Chester's. Remember, Chester's is the grocery store I always went to. As it rang, I scanned the community bulletin board. Plenty of listings for hay, some Australian Shepherd puppies, a garage sale on Cozart Street that ended last week, and nothing posted under Lost and Found column. By the time I pictured one of those puppies in my lap, the ringing stopped. A voice on the other end of the line, shaky and graveled, at first grew assured and easy as Rick Higgins professed he had been logging with mules for over 40 years. Hell, he added, I've been working in the woods so long, I shit logs. I didn't further that part of our conversation, but I did agree to pay him $10 an hour to drag and deck my logs. 2 days later, I met the man and his mules. Rick Higgins didn't look like the man he sounded like over the payphone. At 67, he had a mattress of thick white hair and carried himself like a brick. He trailered 2 mules and parked his rig in a wide spot below the cabin. Don't want to harness them until we actually start to work, he explains as he introduces me to oranges and pickles. At the end of the day, when those mules are harnessed, they have dragged 70 logs up above the building site. Rick never used a harsh word or laid a hand on either animal. He controlled them with sugar cubes instead. The next morning, I said goodbye to that log deck and a cement-walled 5-foot-deep hole and drove to Northern California. I locked the cabin door, the key beside a rib bone in my pocket. So you remember the rib bone was from the bear I had to shoot. I shot out of self-protection. But when I was up at the cabin last week, it's always kind of sad because all the characters I talk about in here were real, and none of them will ever come up to the cabin again because they've been long dead. And the kind of camaraderie that the neighbors on that road had, we had naturally, also no longer exists. It was a way of life that, man, somehow I wish we could get back to, where neighbors trusted neighbors and neighbors helped neighbors out. And if anybody locally is listening to this, when I talk about the Juniper Press, it was written by a woman who was so incredible. She just also recently passed. So like this is history right here. Yeah, and that's what I'm going to conclude it with. So we're also dressed up in our little Halloween colors because next week will be Halloween. I don't. Are the boys in the frame over here? So the only Halloween costumes Zachary and Henry have ever had, I have this basket, and I put them in it, and I put a sign on it that says "Free Kittens," and that's their costume, and it always gets usually great reviews, except from little kids. They go, "Those aren't kittens." Anyway, we hope you have a happy Halloween. Be safe. And remember, these books are available in any form books are. Kate Webster does a great job on audiobooks. She doesn't interrupt like I do these little stories. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like me. Hope Teddy Bear grows up. And always remember, keep hydrated. And yesterday I swam in the river. It was the first, I live on the Columbia River. It was the first time it was below 60 degrees. It was 59 degrees and the air temp was 47. So now I'm going to have to hydrate it with a warmer beverage. But anyway, stay hydrated and see you soon. Bye-bye.